youtube.com/openupyourmind101.
We will be bringing forth our esteemed guest, Mr. Dr. Llaila Afrika. He is a naturopath, a lecturer, a historian, a teacher, and also a holistic health expert. Now we present to you the good doctor, Dr. Llaila Afrika, presenting to you holistic health, sex, love, and relationships.
It's a subject that everyone knows something about. Where they get their knowing from, I don't know, because we didn't get it from an African-centered perspective. What we define as relationship and love and all that is defined by our former slave masters for us. And that's some people that voice that same kind of Eurocentric logic as Dr. Phil and Oprah, whatever. They voice that kind of definition of what a relationship and love and sex is all about, and we follow that. And we don't know any other way to look at ourselves except through their eyes, and that is distorted in itself. So we have to search for a new definition, and it can't be Egyptian because we're not in Egypt. It can't be Guyana because we're not there. We have to do something to the damage that's done to us here. Heal ourselves from all the scars before we can see what we need to see, which is ourselves through another person. It's a bit of undertaking. We should accomplish this in at least 500 years, I assume.
Did you say we should accomplish it in 500 years?
Yeah, you have to start somewhere. You're building a structure. It's sort of like you're building a city. You need a plumber, you need an electrician, you need all these other ingredients to build a city. You just can't build a city. You just can't build a relationship. You have to teach your children to be parents, and that's how you build a relationship. The children define the relationship if we give them the right ingredients. So if we stop treating them as children and start treating them as someone we're teaching to be a parent, then we're starting to build the ingredients we need to move forward. Because that is the only way we can define ourselves through our children. It's the husband and wife that merge together in the child. So that's what we need to understand, that we are building something. And philosophy doesn't build something. It takes a lot of muscle and action to do that, emotional muscle. And we don't have that. We have to learn how to structure our emotions. Learn that no emotion is bad. All emotions are good and bad. It's according to how you use it. There's nothing wrong with hate. There's nothing wrong with anger. Anger is positive and negative. It's according to how you use it. When we're coming out of another psychological perspective, we think anger is bad, hatred is bad, and all these European definitions of what our emotions are. And that hampers us from seeing ourselves or seeing someone else.
Okay. Now, I know that your travels have been around the world, but especially as more recently around the continent of the United States. What are you able to decipher in your contact with melanated folk from state to state? You know what I'm saying? What is it in commonality that all relationships seem to be suffering from?
Our relationships are in captivity and defined by another culture, and therefore our relationships are sick. Our relationships suffer from post-traumatic slavery trauma, just as much as our sex suffers from post-traumatic slavery trauma. Our slave master taught us how to have sex. That is the only person we knew who defined what we to do, what to say, and what not to say, and they taught us how to say love to each other. They taught us how to have sex with each other, and we're still working out of that definition all over the world. And that is our biggest problem. We have to redefine this thing that we're calling an emotion. What is it? Where does it come from? What is the route that you get to go? How do you get to anger? How do you get away from anger? How do you get to love? How do you get away from love? What is the path? What is the neural pathway? What is the triggers? We have to learn all of those things anew. But what we have now is someone else's definition of what anger and hate and love and a bad relationship is all about. And That alone means that we're crazy and out of our minds. To even approach it with someone else's definition is, in itself, is horrible. And we seem to have forgotten that we have our own script for what this is all about. We have our own script for mating. We don't have to go on a date. We can go on a fig or raisin. Why we got to call it a date? Why can't it be a fig or raisin and all these sort of noxious terms that we got from the Europeans? What we're doing is going on a self-discovery with a person. We're taking them through some social engineering. We're adapting to their idiosyncrasies. What we're doing is learning the other person. We're not dating them. We're learning them, and they're learning us. So it's actually a behavioral modification process. And once we call it the right thing, then we can get to the right answer. But calling it a date, what does that mean? Just call it a fig or raisin or pear, for that matter. We have to start calling things correctly. We go into a behavior modification process to learn more about ourselves, which allows us to learn more about the other person.
Interesting. Okay, and to undo that particular process that you're talking about, you know what I'm saying, because you're identifying the problem, and you're also saying there's no quick fix, you know what I'm saying, that we understand. What is the systematic approach to these particular things that, because you're saying that it's something that's binding across generation, across, you know what I'm saying, a certain particular number of people, what is the approach that we should be taking that will kind of somewhat galvanize the whole mass or the population of our people to get their thing together?
Well, there's a wonderful humanitarian statement there, but everyone can't be saved. Even in a war and a revolution, you're going to have some casualties. We're going to have some casualties. Everyone cannot be saved. Every relationship cannot be saved. Every crazy person can't get well. So we have to be realistic about this and understand we're going to have a lot of casualties. We still have them today, even without talking about the subject. But we're going to have a lot of mistakes to be made in this process of learning. You learn how to ride a bike, you fall down sometimes. So you're learning about a relationship, and you're going to fall down as a race sometimes. Because what we're embarking on is a childhood growth and development. It's just like learning how to walk, and the race has to learn how to walk this path called a holistic relationship. And we're going to fall down. We're going to make some mistakes, but we're going to get back up, and we're going to walk. But we're still going to fall down, and we're still going to make some mistakes. And we have to know that we're looking at a race as an organic thing. Each race has a personality. A race can be considered a person. We call that organic. A race has a personality. It has a logic system that it uses. You can call it MAAT, you can call it Kwanzaa, Nguzo Saba, but it has a logic system that it uses. Each race has that. And our race has a personality that has been distorted. And our approach to love and sex has been distorted. And we have to accept that we know how to rape each other. We don't know how to mate each other. We were taught to rape each other by our slave master and our colonizers. We rape each other. We don't mate each other. And we have to be forthright about this thing here. They taught us how to look at each other, so therefore we look at each other's behind, which has nothing to do with the spirituality of the person. We're ass watchers coming out of Greek culture, and we know this. So why are we pretending? We don't know how to look at each other sexually or as spiritual beings. Someone else taught us to look. Someone else taught us to feel. Someone else taught us to be angry. So we have a lot of healing to do emotionally and sexually and in relationships. I'm not talking about the person who has been damaged by a bad relationship. That's a healing in itself, but I'm saying a healing to be done as a race to recover from the damage that was put on us through sexual systems of the Europeans, through mating systems of the Europeans. And we have have to know how to throw that off and say, look, I'm not going to look at this woman's ass or tits. I'm going to look at this person as a spirit first and foremost. And so it takes a lot of training. A lot of brothers slip and tell me they slipped and looked at a lady's ass. I mean, really, we've been at this thing so long that we can't throw off the coats about destruction. And I'm not saying brothers are guilty alone. The women are just as guilty. But we can't throw off the coat of our destruction that easily. So it's going to be a lot of falling down, but we can do this thing. We can do this. Whatever the race has done can be done again and done better. We can do this one. So it's a lot of restructuring that needs to take place. It's not an egghead kind of thing when I sit in a chair and pontificate about the possibilities of a relationship and all those sort of dynamics. No. We use workshops, and we sit down, and we have people sit down, and we take them through mock arguments. We work at this thing. Not no sitting down, and you hear me say some brilliant statement. To hell with that. The brilliant statement is your behavior. Your behavior is the highest form of worshiping God. Not going to a church, not pouring a libation. It's your highest form of worshiping God is your behavior. And through your behavior, I should know you're spiritual. From your behavior, I should know you're practicing MAAT. You don't have to tell me. I can see that from your behavior. So it's the behavior that we're trying to redefine, and we go through some mock exercises to redefine our behavior. We got to start from the ground up with this process and not read about it in some flippant book by some academician type person. We have to do the groundwork, the hard work of just dealing with our own dysfunctionality first in order to deal with someone else's dysfunctionality second. It's a bit of a work, and we're up to it. There's no doubt about that. We can pick some cotton 2 acres a day. Damn it, we can do this one with no problem at all.
You know, can you briefly speak on, are you seeing any success stories coming out of these particular workshops? Are people getting back in contact with you and affirming that what they're going through in these workshops / boot camps is working for their relationships?
Yes, particularly, I see some success. It's kind of what plantation has seasoned us. When I do it in the Caribbean and in England and other countries, it's a lot of different ways to look at success. It's just that a lot of people are surprised at how other people are just crazier than they are. And they're surprised and say, I don't feel that bad at all. Because they're looking at mirrors of themselves and other people, and that wakes people up. It's, I'm really not that bad. Oh, I am that bad. And it's that kind of mirroring effect that helps people grow more so than what I'm saying. It's just they see a mirror, and they begin to see themselves clear and see, okay, I can do that. And they pep themselves up. So I do see some success. It's not like a big explosion kind of thing. There's a little success, but that's how you build the big success. You pick up a little weight, then you can pick up 300 pounds. So I see the person begin to pick up 10 pounds of emotional frustration, and they can build up more emotional muscle so they can throw off the 100 pounds of emotional frustration they've been carrying around. I do see some success, actually.
Indeed. Okay. So I would like to know from your analysis and your perspective, how does health play into this entire dynamic that you're talking about?
Health, physical and emotional and spiritual and mental, that kind of a picture we're looking at. And unfortunately, if a child is traumatized, say, in the first trimester of their prenatal growth and development, it can reduce their brain size, and the traumatization can come from the father nurturing his sperm with sugar and drugs, and the mother nurturing her eggs with sugar and drugs. It can compromise the ability of the child to achieve a certain level of intelligence forever. So the physical diet and behavior of the person that's carrying these eggs and carrying the sperm is very important, but we don't connect to that. We just think we're eating so we can be healthy, but whatever you feed in your body, you feed in your sperm. Whatever you feed in your body, you feed in your eggs. So if I offer a lady a glass of alcohol, I'm trying to kill her eggs because that deprives the cells of oxygen. So I'm just murdering some eggs, you see. We're not connected to that ancestral gene that we're carrying in the egg and in the sperm. We just flip it and say, okay, I'm looking at my health. No, you look at the health of 3-4 generations after you. So it's very important to understand that this health thing is not singularly your responsibility. This is something from your ancestors that you're given to the ancestors of the future. You're just a conduit. And we don't have that kind of connection because we have lost our ability to think of rebellion. We're into our ability to think of integration. To integration is like Obama or Oprah or somebody, but we have lost thinking of rebellion, period. Waking up in the morning, how can I get off of this plantation? Thinking that way like our ancestors did in those cotton fields and rice plantation. That's the first thought you have in the morning is how can I be free from white supremacy? And everything else is second. But that's my first thought. And we have lost that kind of emotional gravity to ourselves. And so in substance is what I'm saying is that we're going through a growing process and a learning process. And health helps you to learn. And if you stress the egg or stress the sperm, it reduces the size of a child's brain forever. So it reduces their potential to learn something forever. So health is not something we should just take lightly when we're eating the wrong foods or drinking or staying up late, abusing our eggs and sperm by sleep deprivation. We're not even thinking that at all. We're just thinking, oh, I miss my sleep. No, your sperm misses sleep. No, your eggs miss your sleep. No, your future ancestor has been deprived of sleep. You should have a little more precious connection than what you have. But that's how flippant we are because we're in this European kind of polluted environment of white supremacy captivity. So we just don't think that kind of level anymore.
Dr. Afrika, do you have exercises that you may share with the family that they could participate with their mate in the household? You know, some simple exercises to just begin to strengthen the relationship through conversation and, basically getting back to our ancient ways.
I usually build exercises based around the person's listening style and thinking type and learning style and learning type, which we teach in that holistic sex workshop. So everyone doesn't learn the same way, and everyone doesn't think the same way, and everyone doesn't listen the same way. So we have to learn the basic, fundamental mechanics, bricks that we need to build this wall called a personality. So one has to know what type of listener they are, what type of thinker they are, and what type of learner they are, and what style of learning they have. And those are basic ingredients. And so we start from there, beginning to recognize what type of thinker you are. Are you abstract thinking? Are you a rational thinker? Are you a harmonious thinker? What kind of thinking style do you have? And should you start practicing that? Once you learn it, you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Oh, my mother has this type of thinking style, and my father has this type of listening style. And then you start to learn more about the mechanics of being a person. These are fundamental things that we have lost because someone has taken our rites of passage, which is a German term, which doesn't mean a damn thing to me. Someone has taken away the academics that we once were taught to be a functional human being, which we call today a rites of passage, which, as I mentioned, was a German term. I forgot his name. I think it was Psyche who invented the term back in the 1840s, something like that. Actually, in 1946, it was actually coined back then. But I'm just saying we have to start with those sort of things and not try to have the whole wall when we just need to start with a brick. How do you listen? Do you listen for information? Do you listen to enhance yourself? Or do you listen to be critical? How do you listen? And how does this person I'm in a relationship listen? And how do I think? Am I a rational, critical thinker? What type of thinker am I? Basic things. And once we take the people through that kind of exercise in the class, workshop, they start building on it once they leave, because they have something to work with, and that's essentially the kind of thing they need. There's not other ways to say love, because there are many ways to say love, and there's many ways to tell a lie. We're just trying to learn some basic things. So the power of our speech and what we say has an anchor to it. It gives it more depth. When we know these things, you can feel the gravity of a person's speech and what they say once they have this kind of basic understanding of how to put together a personality. The things that we take very lightly, unfortunately, I spent some years doing psychotherapy and that sort of rut in private institutions in the military and all that sort of thing, research institution where I worked as a psychotherapist as well. It was a emotional, expensive kind of work for me, and it taught me how to brainwash people. Of course, I used to do that in the military as well. So if you know how to construct a personality, you know how to destruct a personality. And these kind of things that we need to know and need to do are very important, because they should be set up prenatally. Thought and language development starts before you're born. You don't start speaking after you're born. You just develop a better way of speaking, but you were speaking inside of your mother's womb. This we know from psychology and growth and development, that you were talking all along, and now you're talking with, saying dictionary, but you were using similar type of vocabulary in your mother's womb. That's when you develop thought. That's when you develop language. And it's very important to understand that this way we're talking now is a furtherance of the way we talked in our mother's womb, particularly to our fathers and our mother. We did this through emotional vocabularies, manipulated by hormones, and manipulated by physical movement. Because for a child to move, the child is thinking. If a child's not moving, a child's not thinking. So movement is synonymous with thought. Action is synonymous with thought. If you say you're going to be free, your action has to follow it, be with it. It's not a separate thing. Action and thought are one movement. And we learn this one movement in our mother's womb. And sometimes it takes a while for me to go unravel this stuff for people, but it's easy to learn and understand. There's a certain kind of movement that a child will have in their mother's womb if they are Pisces. It's different from a child that's Cancer. It's a different kind of emotional movement and physiological and nerve movement. We call it a neural net. So the child is building a neural net that is facilitated by hearing the father and tasting the mother. The child can taste the mother when it's born, the mother's milk, the mother's skin, but the child hears the father. So the most sophisticated form of sensing is through taste. It's more sophisticated than sight. And developing that kind of ability to taste has a plus and a negative to it, and the negative and plus to it is given to the unborn baby by the father or the significant male that the lady has bonded to. And to distort the man's ability to understand that he's diametrically, unanimously very important during pregnancy, is to help to understand how to build this emotional relationship called love. But as long as men don't understand that they are important in the pregnancy process and they have different kinds of emotional vocabulary for each trimester. As long as that is not understood, then we will continue to produce dysfunctional relationships. So as I was saying, all this kind of dynamics and stuff I learned, but I learned this for the reasons to help the Europeans stay in power, mind you, just to brainwash people and all that sort of stuff. But it's a slow process. That's why I was saying it's not going to be overnight. Because thought and language development starts prenatally, and it has to be facilitated by a bond between the mother and father, or else the child will not develop certain dimensions of feelings, certain degrees of love the daughter or the son will never have, because these dimensions of love is like painting a rainbow, and the colors of the rainbow are missing if the mother and father are not bonded. That completes the rainbow, which translates into a neural net in neuropsychology, but in colors we call it a rainbow. I'm just using different languages so the audience can grasp what I mean, that we are starting too late with this sort of process, you see. It's kind of ridiculous to teach someone to swim when they've already drowned, you know? So we're starting a little late, and everyone can't be saved, but at least we are laying the foundation for the ancestors through learning how to know a person's listening style, thinking style, and learning the science of talking and the science of being emotional. Emotions are a science just as well as they are art. And we have to learn the science of an emotion, how to build an emotion. That is very important. And sometimes we just think because we can say the word emotion or we can say happy, that we understand how to build happy. If we understood how to build happy, we would not be happy watching men box and hit each other in the damn head. Happiness would not come into that equation. See, we don't have the full definition of happy, so we put in happy in other places. We're happy robbing banks, happy masturbating, happy snorting cocaine, because we don't have the full rainbow of happy, because we weren't bonded to our mothers and fathers before we were born. It's a slow process, but we'll get there, mind you. No doubt about that one.
And that's deep. Have you conducted studies that reflect a difference in development between children that are single parented as opposed to children that have the both parents in the home?
No, I have not conducted studies. I was a practitioner. I did the work that these studies are based on. That's what I did in a research psychiatric institution. I did the work, and these guys wrote the books. So I can only talk from the work that I did. And hormonally, in physiology, a girl that's raised by her mother and father will menstruate late. That's all over the world, all races. A girl just raised by her mother will menstruate early. And that's one of the studies done all over the world, mind you.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there a scientific reason for that, or does it have to do with something that's a social adaptation?
No, this is art, which you can call social adaptation. You can call it science. You can use either one of the vocabularies. This is because there's certain hormonal smells that the father gives off. And as I mentioned before, smell and taste, some people put them together, but they are distinct, mind you. This has something to do with the emotion that the father gives to the mother, which alters her biochemistry, which you can call it aura if you're into that sort of thing. So the father is nurturing the mother, that allows the mother to nurture the child, and that alters the aura. For those who are into color talking and that sort of thing. And biochemically, it alters the fat and protein ratio for those who are into chemistry. And hormonally, it changes the hormone from what we call oxytocin, which comes out of progesterone. So it changes hormonally, biochemically, through the fat and protein ratio. And changes the aura for those people into colors. Yes, that's the science of it all.
Wow. Very, very, very interesting. And what have your studies led you to decipher in terms of the sudden increase or spike in homosexuality amongst the species?
I can only go by the MAAT study, which I wasn't a part of. The NAAT study is MAAT. NAAT study. It was a study done on 2 million people in an entire country. And you can look it up. It's a 20-year study. It's not a no
Can
hidden
you spell
thing.
it again? NART?
Yeah, NART study, NARTH. It's not a hidden study. It's just not spoken of. It was done on the entire country for 20 years. And they found out that most of the people that went into that sort of sexual behavior either were traumatized very young, or the mother died, or father died, or some tremendous traumatization, divorce, or molestation occurred. And 90% of those people that were involved in that sort of social behavior. And that was done in a country that approves homosexuality and shows it on TV. So it's not a thing where they were against it. It just popped up. The study wasn't even done for that. It just popped up in the study. They say, what the hell? And that sort of thing. So that's one of the studies that was done inadvertently. They weren't even trying to do it. It just popped up in it. The thing is that the culture defines what is sex. And the culture that we have is not our culture. So we can't talk from that perspective. We're not functioning in our culture. We're not culturally free. If you're culturally free, you can practice your culture at all times and in all situations, which means if some kid did something bad and a black kid did something bad in the Jewish community, the Jews would take that kid and bring him to the black community. The council and elders said, you deal with it. If a kid robbed a bank, the police would take that kid to the black community. The elders said, y'all deal with it. That's when your culture is respected. That's what happens when you're free to practice your own culture at all times in all situations. But that's not what's going on. So we're not culturally free. So to say that we are free enough to choose that form of sex and we can't choose our own education, we can't choose to go in business because we got to go through the European banking system, all that sort of run. We're not culturally free. We're oppressed people. And a free person can ask that question, but not an oppressed person. If we were free, Henry Clark would have been in your classroom. You would have been taught history by Dr. Henry Clark. I'm talking about freedom. You wouldn't have been taught someone telling you Columbus discovered America. We're not free. We don't have a history that is free of white supremacy and all that sort of thing. And we don't have a economics that's free of over mortgages is too high and all that sort of thing. We're preyed upon in captivity, but we're not free at all. So to ask that question would be nice if we were free, but under these conditions, I have to bring that up. We're not free.
So nowhere in your studies or your analysis of this particular situation do you see anything genetic at play? Because food changes genes. You know, I understand about social conditioning, but there are things going on internally in the species that are altering the species. You know what I'm saying? So at what point do we start dealing with reversing that particular process of people becoming genetically compromised?
Oh, first of all, we don't have that juice, man. We can't stop any genetic modification. We don't own no labs. We don't have any research. There's nothing we can do but talk about it. So we're not even there. You want to be straight about it. Genetic research is not our problem. Genetic research, altering the genes, air pollution, food pollution, overweight, cancer, fibroid tumors, high school dropouts, that's all one problem. You just give me another shade of the same problem. We are oppressed people in captivity. And you're naming other shades of this oppression. We're not free. So what is the question here? Our education is not free. We're not freely educated. Francis Cress Welsing never taught you in no school. We're not being educated. So everything we have is oppression. And you're naming other forms of it: high school dropout, poverty, drug addiction, jail. All that stuff is just one thing: oppression by a different flavor.
Can I ask a question about the conditions that I've come across when I began to study us in history? That even though, we weren't oppressed by the Caucasian, when you do study us in history, you do see dysfunction amongst tribes, amongst dynasties, amongst nations, and things of that nature. So, are you saying that if we miraculously, or if somehow, we rise up, revolt, and we come out of our oppression, and we break the chains of white supremacy, that as a society or a nation of melanated people, that none of these things will exist? And I'm even talking 500 years down the line, after we raise our, our frequencies and things of that nature. Are you saying to me that across the continent and the Americas and things of that nature, that these things never exist?
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Once we're free,
right.
You're talking a whole other thing here. But everything you're talking about is through the eyes of oppression. When you read history, you're reading military history. You're reading the invasion of the Europeans. You're reading about men. You're reading the distorted history. You're not reading about what happened to the children. How were they socialized? You're just talking about warfare. That's a male view of history. We're not reading history holistically. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the colonization of history by the Europeans. So when we talk about history, we talk about some war. Psyche, the Persians, Phoenicians, Napoleon, this and that. Ramesses III, he fought the Europeans. He colonized them in 1191 BC. He had 90,000 white people he colonized in Europe. I mean, we talk about history through the eyes of military people. So we are not looking at history. History is a social movement of men and women and children. It's a movement of family. So when we start talking about how the family was changed without European influence, now we're talking about history. What is our history without talking about Europeans? What is our history? How did we change and modify our family? And for what purpose did we change and add and subtract things to the principles of MAAT? No, we don't get into that sort of thing. We don't get into why we changed and altered our food. We changed and altered our food because the Europeans came in with all their grains. And we were trying to market to them, appeal to them, please them. That's all that was about.
Yeah.
And so we changed our diet because of that, just to sell stuff to them. The gold and salt trade out of Ghana. We should have never sold anything to them. That's why they call it the Gold Coast, because we were trading with the Europeans. So we're looking at it as some business people dealing with the Europeans, or military people dealing with the Europeans. We're not looking at how children of that time looked at the Europeans or looked at their mother and father, and that's what I'm talking about. How did the children look at their mother and father at that time without the Europeans? That is not in our history books. So someone has to holistically write our history and get the hell out of all this male stuff and write it from a family perspective. Because history is family movement. Nothing more, nothing less.
All right. So, and for the family that wants to do the research on the way that our family moved, do you have this literature available?
That's called research.
Okay.
That's when they make it available. Research is a skill. I would not tell other people. I wouldn't tell people to do acupuncture. Acupuncture is a skill. Leave those things for those people who have that skill to do those things. That's not for them to do. That's for some of these eggheads in college giving their skill to the Europeans. They need to give it to us. They're trained to research. Give it to us. Stop giving it away. We always give our talent away, working for IBM and all these corporations, presidents, vice presidents, and all. We're giving away our human resources, our intelligence. We got to recuperate and get these eggheads that know how to do it. Do it for us instead of other people. That's all. You want to put together a basketball team, don't hire me. Get LeBron James or somebody. You got to get people with the skill. But they playing basketball for the white folks.
That position.
Yeah, he's playing basketball for the white folks, not for a black team owned by a black person who invested their money in the black community.
Yes.
Whole nother language here that we're talking about. Maybe we're talking a free language. Maybe it sounds a little foreign to people.
Indeed. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I know that that's what people are most interested in. You know, when I say people, of course, I'm not talking about the masses, but in particular for our listeners, you know, that's what their focus is. Their focus is they want to be free, and they are about listening to different perspectives about how to go about obtaining that particular freedom. So, you know, being that we have a few minutes left for the time I believe that you're going to be on our show, can you speak about, you know, what should the family be doing to going about to removing the shackles and gaining their freedom?
Well, essentially, when we do the workshop, Dr. Stevenson and I, we will get into all that, what they need to do, actually. There's not some things you can talk about, some things you have to be taught. Some things are in a teaching situation, some things in a talking situation. I can't talk when I need to teach. So it's kind of hard sometimes when you ask questions like that. You're asking me to teach something. That's a process. Talking, I can just slip out something to say, but I'm trying to help people to understand the dynamics we're dealing with. So when you're talking about a family and what some of the things that families should be doing, they should be educating themselves and don't rely on the European education in any subject, mathematics, economics, no subject at all. We should teach ourselves, sit down and discuss math and English and all these subjects with ourselves. The adults have to be homeschooled, which you may call a rites of passage, but they have to be homeschooled, and the children have to be homeschooled. Everybody has to be. The house should be a learning institution. You don't learn anything outside of your house. Anything you learn out of your house, you better question that whole process. So I'm saying homeschool for the adults, which you can call rites of passage, homeschool for the children, and it has to be just like the Jews do. And other groups do. They educate their own, they close the door, and that's it. So we got to start with small things. We're going to start with the diet. We're going to start with the emotions. We're going to start with the history and put those things together. Tuesday, we're talking about the diet. Wednesday, we're talking about the history. Thursday, we're talking about how to relate, how to have a healthy argument. Just taking you through a healthy relationship with a child, with yourself, with your mate. Hands-on. Like I said, it's a slow process. We got to lay down these bricks to build a wall.
Yes, indeed.
YouTube.com/openupyourmind101